Hello, welcome to our webinar on Manager Essentials, Developing Next Generation Leaders. We will begin in just a moment, right after the top of the hour. All right, hello. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on Manager Essentials, Developing Next Generation Leaders. If we turn to the next page, let me provide the agenda for the meeting. Here is our agenda for the next hour. We'll first start with some brief introductions. Then I will do an overview of what we call the manager development status quo and what we learned from our clients as we built the programs we're going to be talking about today. Next, we will discuss ExecOnline's transformational approach to manager development. We will then do a walkthrough of the participant experience, followed by Q&A and an overview of next steps. So let's turn to the next page. Hello, my name is Adam Briniger, and I lead our client solutions team here at ExecOnline. I'm joined by Chip Cleary, our Chief Academic Officer, in charge of developing our programs at ExecOnline. I'll be leading you through the first part of the presentation, and then Chip will lead you through our participant experience. So let's turn to the next page. Before we jump into the agenda, just a brief word about ExecOnline for those who are not familiar with us and for those who need a refresher. ExecOnline provides a fully integrated learning experience. On the left-hand side of the diagram, we leverage the top global institutions and experts such as Wharton and Stanford. And on the top, combine that with our proprietary technology and instructional design for busy leaders to provide an impactful and lasting learning experience. On the right-hand side of the diagram, we have created an effortless customer experience that minimizes the lift for our enterprise partners. And on the bottom, we provide you with market-leading ROI and business insights data so that you can align your programming to organizational strategy. So who does ExecOnline serve in the organization? Let's turn to the next page. We provide offerings for every level of leader, from frontline managers to more advanced leaders. Our more advanced leaders will leverage our school partner programs in combination with skill building and project acceleration, coaching, and feedback. Our frontline managers can leverage our manager suite, which consists of 2 programs. Our Mastering Manager Essentials program is for experienced managers, more than a year in role. Our Launch into Leadership program is for new managers, less than a year in role. That manager offering, of course, is the subject of our conversation today. So let's discuss how we built the programs and what we learned in the process. Let's turn to the next page. So why did we build a manager offering at ExecOnline? Well, our established clients came to us and they said they had an urgent need to improve manager performance. And they asked us if we could do for managers what we had done for their senior leaders. They wanted something agile, impactful, mobile, and scalable. So to answer that need, we convened a cross-industry focus group to tackle this critical issue. You can see the different logos of the members of the focus group on the left-hand side of the page. The logos reflect considerable diversity in industry, geography, and size of organization. On purpose, as we wanted to build a product for all managers. And we had 2 key objectives for the group. First, fully understand the needs of the manager population. Second, develop a right-sized program to establish strong and consistent management capabilities across the organization. We held 12 focus group sessions and many one-on-one conversations as we developed the program. So what did we learn? Please turn to the next page. We learned that there are 3 current approaches most organizations are taking to manager development. First is what we call the fire hose approach, where organizations hold a half-day to 2-day or more meeting or workshop to raise awareness of key management responsibilities. This helps spread awareness, but our focus group members say that it doesn't lead to application, There's low learning retention and limited support post-session. Second is a resource library approach where organizations provide video content for managers. Now, the virtue of this approach is that the library can be leveraged when you have a management challenge. But these are underutilized, and the content is often academic. There's no cohort experience or integration into on-the-job learning. And some organizations take a blended approach in the middle. In general, though, very few organizations are satisfied with these approaches, as we show on the bottom of the page. Only 9% say they are good or better. And most organizations say they want something that is more virtual and agile. So with the help of our focus group, we wanted to come up with something transformational to solve what is often considered a holy grail issue for companies, improving manager quality. Please turn to the next page. ExecOnline created a transformational approach that we call the learning runway. The learning runway is an immersive approach to manager training that shifts mindsets and behaviors. There are three components to the approach: learn, apply, and reflect. In learn, we provide bite-sized video lectures to create learning flexibility. In apply, each leader creates a plan to ensure successful activation and future adaptability. In reflect, coaches and peer cohorts provide feedback and foster an environment for self-reflection and improvement. Now, as we created the manager program, we heard from our clients that they wanted their leaders to do a few things: activate or switch their mindset to being a manager, from an individual contributor, adapt to new realities, and build a network for more complex, horizontal organizations that we're in. For each of these objectives on the left-hand graphic, we have our participants follow the learn, apply, reflect model as they move down the learning runway until their mindsets and behaviors have changed and they have launched into leadership or massively improved their management capabilities if they're already experienced managers. Please turn to the next page. In creating the approach, ExecOnline integrates the entire 70-20-10 model to drive application. If you think about most learning solutions, they focus on the 10% that builds awareness. Our approach, however, focuses on application activities in a leadership plan, the on-the-job learning experience, you can see that in the bottom part of the page, peer engagement and coaching, and video lectures and assignments. And it's all in one package, so you don't have to add additional features to accommodate the 70-20-10 model as you implement ExecOnline's program. It's an all-in-one approach. So how has this approach worked so far? Please turn to the next page. Well, the results have been transformative since we launched the program. On the left-hand side, 93% of our managers say they have improved their problem-solving skills. In the middle, 95% are more able to align the team to their organization strategy. On the right, 92% have a more diverse network. The left-hand quote, a participant provided feedback on how it's really an emotional experience, not just a rational experience. And the quote on the right-hand side, a participant provided feedback on how it gives them time to focus on strategic issues and not get bogged down in the day-to-day. So I know you want to learn more and get deeper into it. So I will turn it over to Chip now to go into more depth on the participant experience and what this really looks like. Chip?
Great, thanks, Adam, and thanks to everybody for joining today. Really appreciate you investing your time to explore the manager solutions that Adam has previewed for you. So Jeremy, if you can move to the next slide. So let me just recap very briefly what we've heard so far. We heard that ExecOnline, we were asked by clients to help with the challenge of frontline leaders. We've heard that the way we've approached that is how we typically approach. We co-created with our clients based on their needs for a new program to address issues with the landscape of frontline manager development faced today. And we've seen that, at a brief review of some of the results that Adam shared, we seem to be helping our clients win at the game. And a lot of that really is kudos to those clients who have worked with us as we've chartered this effort and move forward to put a solution in place. Now, part of that is that we learned quite a lot as we went through that co-development process working with those charter members. And you're seeing now a screen that shows two possible participants. And the reason for that is, as we started, we really focused on new frontline managers and worked on a program for that. That program's name is listed on the right, Launch into Leadership. And SEMA is an example of a participant who might join that program. So SEMA, high performing individual contributor, because of that, promoted into management, very eager to do a great job, not sure what a great job means, very tense about what it means to be a leader, and not necessarily, having a lot of support at their fingertips. And, that's where we started out, working with our clients to develop a program. What we heard back very quickly was that's a high potential, high need audience. At the same time, many clients had existing managers who had been enrolled for years long. We'd heard ranges of 1 year to 10 years, who really hadn't had the opportunity to have quality management development targeted on the needs of a frontline manager. And so we have launched a parallel program, Mastering Management Essentials, which really targets that audience. Managers who may be experienced, but may not have really had the opportunity to learn the skills that are required in today's environment to succeed as a frontline leader and elevate themselves and their team to achieve the results that their businesses are looking for. So what we'll do in the next 20, 25 minutes is we'll begin to unpack. How does the experience work for Alejandra? We'll dig in as an example, but give a preview of SEMA as well, to be able to say, how do we achieve those kinds of transformative results that Adam pointed to? If we can move to the next slide. We spent a fair amount of time really going back and forth up front to say what's really critical for a frontline manager to be able to do well. And not surprisingly, we heard that there are some differences between the audience of a frontline manager who's new and one who's experienced in role. Just to start on the left with the example of Alejandra, an experienced manager. Beyond, we didn't hear a lot of pains about, I'm not able to assign work, I'm not able to process vacations. There are some challenges initially at coming up to speed with HR systems. What we really heard was challenges with how do we, as help frontline managers create the level of business impact and the business alignment and improvement that their organizations seek in today's turbulent environment, while also helping to develop their team, really making sure that they're developing their team as an asset while they're advancing the business. And when we unpack that, when we boiled that down, what we heard was key things that are really critical to that. Aligning to organizational objectives. While it seems like it's kind of a given that we want our leaders to align the work of their teams, what we heard is that in many times teams spend a lot of time doing a lot of things, are very busy, and aren't necessarily prioritizing what's most important for the organization, and particularly in a fast-moving environment where what's important for the organization changes, and then the team really wants to be agile to respond to in response to that. And we heard it's really critical to develop the team. It's easy to keep your eyes down and keep trying to process the day-to-day work, but to develop the team, there's a toolkit of skills that are important. Skills around setting expectations, using delegation, both to get work done, but also to develop your people, to be able to work with your team's emotional journey, help your team understand the perspective of your teammates. We heard it's obviously important for a frontline manager to manage for results, establish focus, to be able to help the team see what the results are and drive results forward, to be able to consider the immediate time frame, but also what we want to happen over a longer time frame, to be able to communicate. And what we heard was, increasingly a skill that used to be something that was more critical for higher level leaders is now critical for frontline leaders. The skill to adapt to emerging realities, to be continually keep taking stock of where are we, what is changing in our context, where is our current strengths and weaknesses, where are our opportunities, how can I amplify what's working, how can I make sure we focus attention so that our team creates better results last year than they did this year. As we think about the needs of new managers as compared to experienced managers. The same set of needs on the left also apply to the right. But in addition to that, those who are new to role have some additional needs. So if we think about Seema on the right, brand new leader, she needs to be able to help manage her emotional journey. It's a very emotionally fraught time to become a manager, and there's a whole suite of skills around being able to manage your emotional journey, to be able to lead yourself, to be able to discover a little bit about who you want to be as a leader, and oftentimes to be able to flex between being sometimes a part-time individual contributor and a part-time leader, a player coach on the team. Along with that, when we spoke to clients about what can hold leaders back from being successful as they move into a frontline leadership role, we heard from new frontline managers, the notion of mindset. What got me here will not take me forward is critical. So leaning into the role, assuming a leader's identity, understanding really that, the things that really made you successful as an individual contributor, can sometimes actually get in your way of being a successful team leader and getting results through others. So what we have at this point is we've developed a suite of offerings, including an offering for experienced managers, Mastery Management Essentials, and new to role frontline managers called Launch into Leadership. If we move to the next slide, what that means, two different programs, kind of two different form factors also were important to put into place to be able to serve the needs of this different audiences. So to start with the experienced managers, Mastering Management Essentials, it's a 6-week program, time commitment of 2 hours a week. Adam pointed to a 70-20-10 model that includes learning new skills, it includes application, it includes social activities. So, that's 2 hours, that's included in the 2 hours per week. We really worked very hard based on our clients' input to make sure that we could fit these programs into the lives of very busy managers. Now, how does that time break out for the Mastery Management Essentials program? That is, gaining insights, gaining perspective, gaining best practices. And we'll show an example of this in a bit. Video lectures, about 20 minutes of work a week, really applying that on the job to make important results happen for my team while I'm mastering my skills. We'll really unpack that later today, a little over an hour a week. And then collaboration with others. What we found is regardless of tenure and role, the ability to talk to others, to share findings, to get guidance, we have collaboration built into the program. So live events, held in separate weeks, along with other forms of collaboration in the program, roughly an hour at a time. So that's where that blended model that Adam came to. Launch into Leadership, the same kinds of activities, but what we've heard from our clients and what seems to be borne out in the results that we're getting is a new to role leader requires a more calendar time and more intensity to come up to speed on these tasks. That those who are experienced in managers can move a bit more quickly. Those who are new to role need more time. So that's a 12-week, 3-month program, roughly same time commitment per week. A little bit more guidance framework with the video lectures, more time on application, and more increased collaboration. So more powder in the barrel to be able to support those new to role frontline managers. So that's an overview of the form factor of the program, really trying to right size the programs for each of these audiences. If we move to the next slide, one thing that's really important is for both these audiences, it's important to be able to inspire those enrolled to understand the power that's inherent in a frontline leader's role. It's really a critical position to be in, to be able to help your team members grow their careers, but also really inflect the ability to drive results for the organization. And we are thrilled to be able to work with these two experts to provide insights, frameworks, best practices for the program. Dory Clark, many of you may be familiar with, a strategy consultant, author of books like Stand Out and Entrepreneurial You, really about defining yourself and your personal brand, and really a wealth of, works very closely with manager development across a number of organizations, and brings a wealth of best practices, kind of really able to start in the shoes of what it feels like to be a frontline manager and help those in that role improve their practice, move forward. Ori Brofman, also best-selling author, Starfish and the Spider, really about adaptation, agility. How do we take what can behave in a nimble way based on the needs of an ever-changing environment? And both these experts have been fabulous to work with, as they've really been able to hit the nail on the head for the performance objectives that our clients have prioritized. And you can see some of the quotes here of the responses from participants who have really been thrilled to be able to hear through video lectures insights that can drive the performance capabilities that we're really looking for here. But as Adam mentioned, having insights is not enough to really drive learning. We need to drive application. So if we move to the next slide, at the core of the programs is, as is the case through all ExecOnline programs, we strive for learning by doing with impact. Let's have our participants work in the context of their organizations on something that's important to them, where they really apply these skills as they learn them in the context of trying to complete important work for their organizations. Different programs, a little bit different context to that. In a few minutes, we're going to do kind of a deep dive, walking through an example with Alejandra of how this works. The headline for that is in the Experienced Manager, Frontline Manager Program, Mastery Management Essentials, that focuses on how do I help my team move to the next level by applying the skills that we've talked about in the context of framing an aligned critical improvement initiative and then launching that initiative with my team. And we'll walk through what that looks like. In the Launch into Leadership program for the new manager, that's really about how do I develop a leadership plan that captures the key elements of where my team is, what my role is vis-a-vis the team, where I want the team to go, and how do I take my team, do kind of a bite-sized version of what we're doing with that improvement initiative in the Mastery Management Essentials program. How do I lead my team through a quick win where we try to make an impact, we show that we can work together, and we also reflect and learn and adapt by that and then move forward through the program. And that leadership plan provides a framework that managers can then rely on as they continue to move forward through their career to identify what is it that the organization's asking for my team, how are we doing today, where is it that my team can develop further, and then what am I going to do about it next? So, learning by doing by application is really, at the heart of how we try to drive the kinds of results that Adam talked about to really deliver transformative learning. Let's move into a little bit about how does that actually work? So if we move forward, this is going to give you an overview of, a journey that for like Alejandra, as an example participant, would go through as she moves through the program. Comes in, identifies, and I'll walk through this, identifies line of sight for how does her team align to and contribute to the organization. Then as she moves in through the modules, module 1, which is, week 1 of the program, out of that, what are really the priorities that the organization has for my team? Week 2 of the program, how are we doing against those priorities in particular? So, how do I assess my situation and frame a point of view about that? Week 3, in the world, we're always swamped with more opportunities to take action than we have time and ability to take action. How do I identify opportunities, but then how do I prioritize those to choose something concrete that I know is going to make a difference to the organization, that's going to help me develop my team, but then is practical for me to execute. So moving forward to plan that initiative. And then, we'll talk about 5. So 5 is really about helping a leader take responsibility for setting their team up for success, creating conditions for success. And that often has to do with holding conversations with others. Coaching conversations are one of those. This is a point in the program where we invite participants and guide participants through holding a set of conversations to make sure that they create conditions for success with their team. And then in Module 6, they launch that initiative with their team. So, you can get a sense already for how we're using these activities to help the participant focus their attention as they're looking to apply the skills and capabilities we're developing. Along the way, then, at each module in the program, we're feeding in insights, frameworks from Dory and Ori to help them take this application. We're weaving in social learning, so I have a chance to talk with others who are in my situation, get some guidance from ExecOnline experts as I move through this program. So that's an overview. Now let me move forward and then say we're about to give you a bit of a chef's tour of that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Alejandra, and we'll use Alejandra as a case example to make this experience a little more concrete for you. I know in talking about this program with other clients, there's an often question of, I see the objectives, appreciate the learning by doing with impact approach. What does that really look like? And what we'd like to do in the next few minutes is open the covers and share with you a little bit about what that looks like. So to tell you a bit about Alejandra, Alejandra is an experienced manager. The scenario we'll share here is she's been in role 3 years. While she did have a brief orientation to management program when she first joined, it was a couple of days. It happened very quickly. Didn't really have a lot of time for it to sink in for her. And she feels like she's been doing fine with her team. She leads a team of sales engineers as part of an enterprise tech company. Small team, 3 other people on her team. They are acknowledged as doing good work. She feels perhaps a little stuck, like they're working this year the same they're working last year. She's seeing that her team members aren't necessarily developing. And she does see also that her organization is growing and moving into new markets. And so the job of the sales engineers, the job of her team is becoming both busier as they're faced with more clients without more resources, and more complex as those clients have a broader variety. And so this may be like a lot of experienced managers who are, running the ship day to day, able to allocate work, able to coach on that work directly, technical experts in their area. But Alejandra really, she's, being seen as successful in her role, but she's not really able to continue to transform her team, move to the next level. She'd like to do that. She's not quite clear what that is. And so, in this program, what she'll do is she'll learn those skills of identifying how to align, how to set priorities, how to develop her team, how to create change, how to be agile. So let's see how that happens. If we move to the next slide. So it's Alejandra starts. What we do is we have her, start at the start in the program. She hears some video lectures from Ori and Dory that really help her, set her sights on, an inspired view of leadership, really the potential that a frontline leader has to create change for the organization, impact, while at the same time, helping her team members develop their careers as they go forward. And, to really to make that happen in a very complex world, it means really keeping track of what is it that your team is intended to contribute to your organization. So we start her out with identifying what we call line of sight and having her clarify her priorities. Now, as we work with leaders in leadership development programs, a challenge that all leaders face is, yes, I want to build my skills. Most leaders are really quite committed to that, we found. At the same point, they face the challenge of, today is not a good day. Today is not a good day. There's always competing demands. And so we pay quite a bit of attention of how can we create a structure which makes it practical for leaders to develop their skills in a supported way. And the application is really quite central to that. So we put a lot of focus on making that application both based on great insights from our experts and straightforward to get done in the real world. So if you move to the next slide, I'll show an illustration of what that looks like. So here we're asking Alejandra to identify her line of sight. And the way that works is when I enter the modules where I work on this, I am given a weekly assignment. This is an example of what that weekly assignment looks like. It's please identify how would you summarize your organization strategy? How would you identify your organization's key priorities? And then summarize how does your team contribute to those priorities? We're not asking Alejandra to conduct a large research project. We're not asking her to write a book. It's really boil this down. This should be the kind of thing that an effective frontline manager has ready at their fingertips for an elevator conversation when they get into an elevator with an executive, and the executive turns around and say, how are things going with your team? So, we really make this very simple, and it's again supported by video lectures and other support materials we provide. Alejandra identifies her line of sight. When she does this, she realizes that, while most of what she writes down, she already had in mind, that really at the bottom of the line, what her organization's looking for from her sales engineering team is pretty simple. That the organization wants the sales engineers to help the sales team be able to increase their win rate and be able to increase their deal size because they've understood the needs of their clients and they've provided appropriate solutions to them. So, really at the bottom line, she begins to wonder about how much of our time is really allocated towards, the key contributions that my department is responsible to make. As she moves forward, she begins to clarify her priorities. And if we move to the next slide, again, a simple framework based on simple questions that are absolutely vital for frontline managers to be able to master. Here, what are your organization's top priorities from your line of sight? What are your direct managers' key priorities out of that? And then what are your team's goals? As you summarize, what is it you're trying to do now with your team during this period? What are your team's goals? And as Alejandra does this, she realizes that in her case, her team's goals are actually quite loose. They have activity goals, they have turnaround time goals, but the goals that she has set with her team to date, she realizes are not really aligned to the contributions that the organization's looking for. Beginning of an aha moment. Maybe there's something in here, maybe I can take a step to improve the impact I'm having for my organization. So that's the first step of Alejandra's journey. And she comes out of this realizing that, there is a pretty clear, crisp view of what her team should contribute. She realizes that it's not necessarily the case that her goals have been aligned to that to date. And so she's keen to move forward. How can I begin to move forward on this? If we move to the next slide, what we have after that is Alejandra takes a step back to assess her team's situation, and from there she'll identify an improvement initiative. So moving into that same kind of framework at this point. How do I get some best practices, video background about how do I innovate, what's the role of innovation, where do ideas come from, but then also how can I, with a practical time commitment, boil down what a experienced manager who's totally effective should be able to say about what their team situation is in a way that's practical for me to complete in the time that we've allocated for the program. If you move forward to the next slide, the way we do that here is the situation assessment. We use the SWOT framework, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Again, you can see, we're not asking participants to write a book. It's really about prioritized targeted thinking. What are the most important strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And then from that, if we move to the next slide, we ask her to then take a step to say, given what's important to the organization, so what you did when you were clarifying priorities, given the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, begin to step back and brainstorm some opportunities. How can you make improvements? And in fact, how can you make improvements in two critical areas? First, how can you improve the results that your team delivers to the organization? So we call those potential improvement initiatives. But second, how can you improve the capabilities of your team members? And there we really focus with the team members on what would you prioritize as the most important development opportunity for each team member? We have participants go through this exercise. So as Alejandra thinks about her situation and explores her situation, what she realizes is up till now, she's been thinking increased volume. She needs more staff. She realizes that in fact, her team has grown quite expert, and quite a lot of the time that her team has spent now is actually rehashing solutions that they've used in other places. They haven't really figured out how to package the knowledge and expertise that they've generated in a way that makes it easy for others to consume. She also realizes that as she looks at the new segments of customers that her organization is serving, that they're often underserving customers who might be easy for them to serve. For example, in her situation, there's a group of customers, her organization called cloud novices, new to cloud software, new to SAS software and the domain of software they provide. Should be quite simple to serve, but her organization has been structured really around early adopters, not late adopters. And so they struggle and invest tons of time in those customers. So she begins to lay out, she sees, I can begin to move from thinking about incrementally adding people in response to, a linear increase in sales volume to really thinking about how can we change the way we work with customers, how can we change the way we work with the sales team to work in a different and kind way that create more value while being more efficient for us. As she looks at her team, she can see that, she has different team members, a senior team member who perhaps, is technically great, not that great at mentoring the junior team members, mid-tier team member who has been struggling to actually complete the day-to-day work, and kind of a young go-getter who shows a lot of promise, but really hasn't had a lot of development opportunity. And so we work her through that. At the end of that exercise, we ask Alejandra to identify one improvement initiative that she'll use in the rest of the program. For example, how can we better serve cloud novices in a way which is less labor intensive? If we move forward, I think you're beginning to get a sense of how the program works. I'm going to move a little bit more quickly at this point. So we ask her to plan that initiative. Here, this is really kind of the cognitive desk work sort of portion of, setting her team up for success. We ask her to look around the corner. What are the key elements she needs to put into place in order to drive a successful initiative? And if we move to the next slide, you can begin to see what some of those are. How would you define the outcomes that you're seeking? How do you define success? Who do you need to be involved, and how can you give them important roles? As you do that, think about those development opportunities. How can you, kill two birds with one stone? How can you build your teams while also trying to create important change for the organization? And then given that, how can you map out a plan that your team can move forward with in a simple way that will allow them to take ownership, over the initiative that you're framing? This is supported by insights from Ori to Dori about where it's easy as a frontline manager to go wrong in this. For example, it's easy to think that you will declare this is what the path should be able to deliver it to your team, and then they'll be good to go with it. So how do you stay in touch with your team as you move through this? How do you monitor progress? How do you have informal check-ins? How do you make sure that you right size the work so it's practical for the team to accomplish? So so Alejandra's moving through this. She's getting insights about how to do each of these areas. She's then applying them in the context of her business to something that's important to her team, that's important to her team members, that's important to her manager. So we move forward, she's now at a point where she has a plan on paper. There's another step of setting the team up for success. And this is, any initiative is going to have risks. Those risks often involve people risks. And for a frontline manager, that often involves having a series of one or another kinds of conversations. So early on in the performance objectives, we saw things like coaching being critical for frontline managers, has been for a long time, continues to be, perhaps even more critical now than ever. Holding developmental delegations, how do I set up those conversations? Holding a challenging conversation, So beyond the desk work side of setting up an initiative for success, there's also how do I hold the conversations that need to happen day in and day out to move the work forward? And the way we handle that in this program is we ask participants to align what conversations need to happen in order to set this initiative up for success, and pick 2 out of 3 kinds. In this case, she's going to pick a midterm team member who, struggles with proactivity, to hold a coaching conversation about, in this upcoming initiative, what support would be useful to help you be able to successfully execute that. She may also hold a challenging conversation with the sales leader who's likely to resist this initiative to overcome a challenge that she sees, coming forward with that. So at this point, she's out in the field, being able to, act as a proactive leader to set her team up for success by handling conversations that, can feel awkward and uncomfortable until you practice them. Then finally, moving on from there, she's moving towards, this is some planning that she'll do around those conversations. We can move forward to the next slide. She's at the end where she's ready to, move forward with the initiative. And so in the program, she launches the initiative. We also, in this program, as well as in Launch into Leadership, she will write what we call a final presentation. It's really a summary of the work that she's done in the program that is ready for her to share portions of with other leaders as she's communicating the initiative that she's framed, but also with her direct manager, to be able to hold a conversation with her direct manager about the direction that she's taking here. So that's a preview of what that program looks like, and tried really to uncover, how do we achieve the results that Adam pointed to at the top of the hour by using this learning by doing with impact approach that starts with the performance objectives that our clients have prioritized as being most critical in today's organizations, integrates aligned best practices from leading experts, Dory and Ori, in a way that allows for learning application on the job during the course of the program, not learn now, apply later, in a way that's practical to fit into the busy lives that frontline managers have. And that's a drill down into the Mastering Management Essentials. That experience I walk through is 6 weeks, 2 hours per week. Launch into Leadership, similar framework broken down because new managers, our data has shown as we've looked, feel more pressure to be able to manage their own time. We give them a bit more hand-holding. We break the activities down a little bit more. We give them a little bit more calendar time. So 3 months, 2.5 hours a week. So that's an overview of the participant experience. As we move forward, I did want to share just a preview for you of, what does that look like in terms of a technology? So I wanted to pull together a little bit of a demo of what this looks like. Before we start this, just to set a little context, as you've gotten the sense as we've worked through the hour, we put a lot of attention here at ExecOnline into how can we enable busy managers, busy leaders at all levels, to succeed in the leadership development that's important to them and that their organizations require to drive success. And part of that is being able to deliver where and when managers are. The program is an online program. The online work can be done at a computer. Most of it can be done on a phone, like we're going to show. It includes live meetings. It includes, work with your team. It includes asynchronous collaboration with a team of peers in the platform. So, what you'll see is a bit of the quote unquote self-study experience as, Alejandra goes in and reviews one of those lectures we talked about. So why don't we go ahead and start the mobile demo. We've pulled together a brief clip for this. And, what you'll see is that, as participants come into the program, they can see where they are in the program. They can see a lecture. I'm going to go quiet for a minute so you can hear.
Obviously, effective communication is critical for a manager. You're going to be talking to your team, communicating with them, sometimes about complicated or delicate subjects all the time. But how do you do it? Here are a few things to keep in mind. First of all, a common mistake is to assume that if you say something once, that people will get it. What actually is surprising, but almost always true, is that people...
Great, so we'll cut that lecture short. Again, the notion is that at the point at which Alejandra is listening to that clip, she will have an assignment in hand that aligns to work that she's been doing through the program that creates need. boy, I need best practices, I need insight. Dory, as you can see, is just wonderful at framing this in a way that's easy to reflect in managers' day-to-day lives, and gives fabulous great practices. Those great practices are iterated in the templates and instructions that we saw today, and that's what along with the social collaboration creates the cycle of learning that leads to the results we have. Now we're about to move forward into Q&A. Before we begin the Q&A session, we did want to get started with a couple of polls that will guide our thinking as we're thinking about expanding the solution to beyond covering 2 audiences, also cover international languages. So let me turn it back to Adam to guide us through those polls.
Great, thank you, Chip, and thank you for that walkthrough, that wonderful walkthrough of the program, and Dory's great overview on the mobile app. So let's bring up the poll. So in the first poll, we will focus on the reading comprehension of your non-native English-speaking people managers. If all of your people managers are native English speakers, please click the NA, the not applicable, so they're all English speakers. Please select fluent if your international people managers would understand a program in English, as well as they would understand a program in their native language. Proficient would indicate that the participant would understand the majority of an English program, however, may need additional support. If you think about like a translator tool for complex instructions. Remedial means the manager would struggle to understand the program content, if not in their native language. And finally, no proficiency if the participant could take a program in English. We'll just give everyone another few moments to submit their responses if they haven't already. Great, thank you for that. Let's move on to the second poll. The second poll will look very familiar, but this time we'll focus on your international manager's ability to understand spoken English. Again, if all of your people managers are native English speakers, you can go ahead and click NA. I'll give everyone just a few minutes to submit their response before we move on. Great. I think we've got all of the poll results in, so thank you very much for participating in our poll. That is definitely going to be helping us as we roll this out to a global audience. So now to wrap up our session today, we have left a few minutes to the top of the hour to take any questions for the audience. So please type your questions in the chat box and I will direct to the right person between Chip or myself. So I'll give you a few minutes to ask any questions. One more minute.
And Adam, I think I see some questions in coming in. So, I see one question: would somebody take Launch into Leadership and then Management Essentials, or is it just one or the other?
So Chip, why don't you start with that question?
Yeah, great. Okay, and the answer is it's one or the other. So these are really alternative kind of on-ramps to the leadership suite that we've developed. So I would not first take one, then later take the other. It really be, I would, if I am less than a year of manager as the typical sort of cutoff point, I would move into Launch into Leadership. More than a year's experience as a frontline manager, move into Mastering Management Essentials.
Great. Thank you for that that answer, Chip. And so just to reiterate that as well, we would not take both of them. So let's get some additional questions in. Chip, I'm not able to see the questions. Are you able to see the questions?
Let's see. I think I am. Okay, in fact, actually, we have a series of questions. So yeah, let me ask the next question. What support is available for participants as they work through the assignments? And, Adam, I'm happy to talk to that one.
Yes, if you could take that one and then
Yes.
work with the rest of
Great. Great question. And, the 3 levels of support. So, 4 levels of support. So first is, I get an assignment. First level of support, video lessons from Ori and Dory, sharing frameworks, best practices, likely challenges, tips and traps. Second level of support. In some areas, we've augmented those with additional explainers or interactive tools to be able to explore a concept. Third level of support, kind of job aids that go along with the assignments to help me complete the activities in the assignments. Fourth level of support, in the live events, I have the opportunity to share with peers and also get input from ExecOnline experts. I also have that ability to collaborate through a team chat with a group of roughly 6 to 8 other participants in the program who are with me through my journey in the program.
Great. So some other questions coming in. One is, how frequently are these courses run? So we offer the course 5 times a year. So if you're familiar with our school partner programs, we have sessions in the winter, the spring, the summer, and then twice in the fall to accommodate those different times. And so we know that you have, manager needs across the globe at different times. And so there are 5 different start points for the program. Another question over to you, Chip. What is the average duration time for each lecture?
Yeah, great question. And it's really between 3 and 5 minutes. One of the things that we found when we were doing our initial, exploration was, this was a question we worked with our clients on. And the notion of, I am on my way to work. I would like to be able to consume part of the program while I'm in transit, and I'd like to be able to get the nuggets that are relatively bite-sized was important to participants, and we've gotten great feedback on that. So between 3 and 5 minutes for each of those lectures, that means in a given module, I'll be getting a series of lectures to be able to cover the suite of frameworks and practices that are relevant to that module.
Great, thank you for that answer as well. Another answer that has come in that I'll also speak to is, can you speak more to how impact is measured, coming out of these programs? And I think, ExecOnline, one of the things that we, spend a lot of time thinking about is being able to measure the impact of the program so that you can demonstrate the ROI internally and really make sure that the programs that you've got are aligned to the organizational strategy that you have. And so we measure the impact in a few different ways here. So one way is through our in-program surveys. And so some of the things that we'll get after in those in-program surveys are sort of looking at, confidence pre and post, for example. We shared some data on the upfront where we were really sort of looking at, kind of coming into the programs, how confident are you with difficult conversations? Now that you've been through the programs, how confident are you with those difficult conversations? So think about the program objectives that Chip went through and sort of really measuring, how that impact, shifts over time. And how the confidence, really sort of shifts over time. So we look at confidence, we look at behavior, change over time. We also, in our Mastering Manager Essential program, we also, because we have a very, solid sort of business project, we use the business project methodology that we also use in our other programs. So looking at, asking people to sort of take a look at the improvement initiative that they have. We'll ask them a number of questions, and then through those different questions, really be able to assign out a return on investment, sort of a dollar figure that we can share with others. So that's a a big part of the impact measurement that we'll do as well. We do all of that within the course of the program itself, but we also do an alumni survey as well. And so, for those coming out of the programs, we want to kind of follow up and sort of look at the long tail of the impact of the programs. And so there, we'll come back to, those individuals, ask them about, those competency shifts, those behavioral shifts, that they've made, about that improvement initiative that they focused on, what is the, impact that they've been, sort of receiving, as well as sort of getting into, changes in their team, from an employee engagement, commitment, standpoint as well. So really a full suite of measurement is how we approach it through first, looking at those different surveys within the program, but then also, those alumni surveys as well. And we had another question that came in around alumni support, or network, for program participants. And so one of the things that we do again is that we follow up with those alumni, make sure that we're really sort of capturing their experiences, where they're going, as part of it. I think the other thing to note is that, and this kind of gets to the link between our manager programs and our school partner programs, is that as, our alumni sort of progress in their careers, they can go from, first focusing on, one of our new manager programs, but eventually then being part of the school partner programs as well as they take on more responsibility at the organization. We also have a LinkedIn group where we get to, those different alumni, together as well. Another question coming through, and maybe Chip, if you want to kind of take this one on, is completion rates for the programs, and just sort of, your thoughts around, how that is trending.
Yeah, so completion rates range between 80 and 85% for the program. This is really, I think, quite an accomplishment as we think about, a typical challenge for an extended program is how do we keep busy participants moving through the program? And we've hinted at some of the supports we provide through that. We haven't really spoken about our progress management team and our executive support center that are there to support participants as they move through the program. But really pleased with the fabulous completion rates, the ability for participants to stay with the program for the duration that's required, and deliver the impact to their own careers and to their organization that we're seeking with the objectives.
Yeah, and just to follow on a little bit to what Chip was saying as well, is completion rates were obviously something that was sort of top of mind for us as we were developing the program. We're known in the industry for having very high completion rates, and so we wanted to continue that, those completion rates. But also just sort of looking at where we are with other manager solutions, and sort of looking at some of the limitations of those solutions and how it's played out. One of the issues, again, sort of thinking back to the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about resource libraries, for example, very low completion rates across those. And so really wanted to hone in on that part as well. And another question that came in is sort of thinking about how the offerings for the manager population fit into a broader program journey with your school partner programs. And so I think that's a follow-up to what I had been discussing a moment ago in terms of the link between those different programs. And so what we really sort of see is kind of ExecOnline as an offering that will follow those leaders throughout their sort of journey at the organization. So as they start with us as a manager group, and then they kind of move into more senior sort of team leader work. They might do a program with us from Columbia on building and leading effective teams. As they move up in the organization, they might be focusing on our strategy courses. As we learn, go into the different sort of talent reviews, we'll be able to identify additional, sort of opportunities, across, those different programs as well. And so one of the things that we think about is making sure that those experiences fit together. You can go to one platform, see all of the different programs that you've been working on at ExecOnline. sort of in one place. We also are able to provide a lot of consistency in the data over time, so you can really, understand and work with the broader portfolio of programs that we've got. So another quick one, Chip, and this will probably be the last one. What is the approximate size of an average cohort? Would they be able to interact with managers from other organizations?
Yeah, great question. And the size of the cohort is, so it's worth spending a minute to unpack that, because there's a structure there. The size of the cohorts are, for the program runs, are quite large, really. The manager populations our clients have are, often significant. And so we're really seeing the program, running at significant volumes. The experience of an individual participant is they don't see the full cohort. Each individual participant is put on a team. That team, depending, is typically their own organization. That team is part of a section. That section is across companies. And so they'll be exposed to their team and their section. They won't be exposed to other sections. And to, run down a little bit how that works. When in the program, I have the ability to essentially chat with members of my team, and there's key moments where I'm prompted to do this as I move through the program. That's with my team. What we found is most organizations are most comfortable with those chats being within the family, within their company. So that's sort of part one. Part two is we do have live events. We mentioned the structure of those just in passing during today. In those live events, there's kind of a bookend structure. I start with the section, the large group, that could be 50 or 60 people. I have a breakout activity. I hear voices from multiple companies, therefore, that's actually quite popular. We get a lot of great feedback our participants appreciate. I do a breakout activity that's with my team. Most participants are within same company team. Some participants are in cross-company teams. And then I come back after the breakout activity, and again, I interact with the full section. So, runs are quite large. I'm in a section which gives me a home, and then I'm working with the team shoulder to shoulder as I work through the experience.
Great, thank you, Chip. So we are at time. And so we're going to be following up with the recording and concise takeaway slides. So expect those to be, coming. We'll be coordinating with our commercial team members as well. And thank you for your participation and all of the great questions that you sent our way. And we're looking forward to working with you on this program going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy.